Now that I'm having the beginnings of joining the world a bit, after this year that I've been really inside of, and inside of feels like the right word, kind of tucked um, into such a kind of grand internal experience that it makes relating to the default world just awkward. Um, and I want to speak about grief, and I want to speak about what I've learned about how it moves, at least through my body, and in talking and comparing notes with others. I think it's worthy of conversation, given that our culture, our dominant culture here in the United States, does such a poor job of really honoring, acknowledging, and shaping around grief, because it's such a powerful force in itself. I would compare it to something like, I mean, in terms of like the quality of force, like when something has you, let's say it's a mesmerizing sunset, or watching light hit water, or some sort of erotic connection with someone that feels like there's no way your will is going to, or you're going to have to assert a lot of will if you think you are going to overpower this energy. It's kind of tidal wave-like. It, not in a mean way, but it kind of like laughs at will. It laughs at the part of our personality that thinks that we have a say on what we feel when, even sometimes how we behave. It's as if there is a force that has a plan of its own, a life of its own, moving through the body. And I'm sure I'll say some words here that either you can relate to, or you've certainly heard when people speak about grief. And the word that I really want to put out first is unpredictability. I think that unpredictability just sums up so many of the experiences I was inside of. I've been in loss, but there was several layers of loss that I was working. Primary relationship, a pregnancy that terminated itself. I miscarried right at the end of my first trimester, and then of course the thing I've been, I guess, more verbal and out about on Facebook, my brother dying and being with him through his death, or through his dying process. Death we do alone. So there was something about being, I'm sure you've either been in or been around an area of the ocean where many different currents are colliding. And to have that many layers of grief occurring at the same time, not that I'm out of it yet, but to have that many layers occurring really set up chaos in a particular way. And sometimes I would be on top of a wave, and I'd be really seeing life from a very high view, and it was exquisite. And to engage with the default world that kind of like has a to-do list each day and gets tasks accomplished, and functions within failures and successes, and connection or lack of connection, and love, and that whole world seemed kind of precious, and yet sad at the same time. Precious and sad, like something that gives this ride texture and story, precious story, really creates a lot of what we go through on a day-to-day basis. And yet from this kind of top of the wave experience, it seemed as if it was something I didn't want to participate in, like, because it seems like there's a lack of awareness that on the top of the wave, as I'm sure you've experienced, doesn't look so appealing. And then there's like way, way, way deep down, which I think I was probably experiencing much more of than the high peaks, and that's really an underwater experience. And underwater is a good way to describe it, because I mean, these are things that if you've taken like some drugs or plant medicine, you know what it is to be in an altered state. Or if you've even, been in dreamlike states during the day. It's where the life that you're typically used to living does not feel real. And not in this sort of like dissociated, I'm outside of what's going on in the world. Not like that. More like when you're underwater and someone's talking and you might be able to make out some words that they're saying, but you're really hearing it through a different, through a different substance, and thus the sound waves are traveling differently, and you're hearing differently, and perhaps you're even making meaning of what you're hearing, even though you're not hearing the exact words, and perhaps some of those things that you're hearing are quite profound, whereas others are just like gobbledygook. What else happens underwater? It's like the vision changes. So I'd say the most challenging part is like when people would expect me to remember something I saw or a conversation that we had, but that doesn't have so much to do with vision. And it's like I'm underwater. I'm not recording in my memory bank what's happening above the water, where it seems like most people are hanging out. And not to say that we don't have many griefs that we experience perhaps several times a day, but then there's the biggies that are really about transformation. And I don't mean to use that word lightly. I really mean life as you know it is no longer going to function the way that it has been functioning, you are no longer in the same matrix that you've been in. And when it comes to death, it's like important key characters to talk about story are missing, which means that the way that you think and what you associate what you make plans around, and the qualities of experience that we're accustomed to having, it changes. And I don't know, it's kind of like if you put on a different set of glasses, colored glasses, like the world really does look different. And I think it's worth respecting. And this will bring me to what I think is important for those of us that are in relationship to and supporting those that are grieving, particularly big changes in their life. Particularly around death. There's something about a soul, a spirit embodied that you are engaging with, and then that person no longer being here it's a different remaking than the kind of remaking when you're rebuilding a relationship with something that's still here. Let's say a breakup, change of relationship at work, a divorce of some sort. Divorcing yourself from something. It means that it's still going to exist. You're just not going to be relating to it the same way. And there's something really unique that I think should be differentiated around death itself, because I experience it as the energy lines truly shifting, reshaping themselves in a very real way. And so to support someone that, I'll tell you a few things. I remember someone telling me once you start to come to the surface a little bit more, you're going to be amazed with how deep you've been. So there's a way that I've heard others talk about really losing track of how altered you are. Because this culture is not set up for us to take a year off to recalibrate. So there's a way that a part of you, a part of life has to keep moving through you as if a change hasn't happened. That's just how the culture is set up, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, maybe there's some wisdom to that. It certainly keeps structure and rhythm and regularity alive. But there's a way that even when I lost track of how deep in the underwater world I was in terms of grief, if someone else could remind me or track that for me, it was like as soon as someone just acknowledged, even if 6 months had gone by since a loss, if someone acknowledged it, it was just like, whoa, the tears were right there under the surface. Because what I am walking around with as someone in grief is having to manage the fact that the rest of the world isn't coming to join me in it. That's I think, in part why it can be so incredibly satisfying, nourishing, important, healing to be around others that are experiencing a big shift around one dying. So I know for me, each time that I go back to New York and I'm with my brother's wife and son, it's like something in me can settle. Because the make-believe, the pretending, not that it's so overt, it's just kind of what you have to do, but that extra layer that has to be put on in order to keep functioning in the default world is exhausting and takes a lot of energy. And so when one is grieving, just to allow them to do a lot of resting and then to come and meet them in their world. I mean, there are so many people that think like, well, I don't know if that person wants to talk about it. And I think that's good caution, but I also think that that's more about someone not knowing how to do it well. And we don't have to do it well. Just to join someone in their experience, ask questions about what they're experiencing, get truly, genuinely open anytime you have time to be with someone in the experience they're having. And go and meet them. Don't invite the grieving back to the world. It's like, it's not kind. It's really not kind. And I know that there are families that function this way, and kind of subcultures that let alone the dominant culture that says like, come back to the living and let's keep going on, keep being a trooper and keep moving on. You have to move forward. And it's just like that practice, of course, is important. Absolutely. We, as the ones that are continuing to live, it is our duty, it is our job, it is our responsibility to find our way to feel more alive. Yeah? I mean, the exquisiteness of life is here to be experienced, and when we get close to those portals, life and death, it seems to light up a bit more. However, fucking give the process some time, for real. Like, there might not be a moment or a day that happens in a grieving cycle, or meaning there might be plenty of days that go on where there's no sense of something feeling precious. It feels plastic and void and empty, and like there's something huge missing. A huge life force is missing, and that might be the present moment experience. To go join someone in there, that can be much kinder than trying to like remind them of how great life is and that we need to go on. So there's something about letting it be awkward, even letting someone know, like, I don't know what to say right now, but I so want to be with you, just like, I'm coming into your world, because your world is real, and you probably have some wisdom going on there, and let me try to get close to it. We miss by writing grief out of our culture, we miss the wisdom that lives there, and there's so much, and to move away from it and to try to steer away from the chaos, the unpredictability, the sadness, what can feel kind of vortexy, perhaps, about someone's experience of grief, or the tension or override that can be awkward to be around when someone's, kind of pretending. These things just take us away from this underwater wisdom. And I just feel so motivated to support us in getting better at this. I am absolutely still learning myself, but I do know that it has something to do with the body, and it has something to do with actually being able to contain, tolerate, with a loving way of using that word, the sensations that are running through the body. If it's anxiety, can we actually be with the feeling of a heart racing and breath picking up, and maybe we're checking out a little bit? Can we be with that? Can we stay current and present with that, both in our own bodies and then with whoever we're supporting? If it's anger, can we make room for anger? How do we make room for anger? We have to know how to run it through our own bodies. Otherwise, it's really challenging, without checking out a little bit, to hold space for someone else as they're moving anger. Kind of existential humor, that can be a part of it. Awkwardly timed things, because time and space really changes. Our experience of time and space can really change with a death. And so, can we lean into these experiences? Can we hold a wide space for these experiences without trying to change them? I've just been amazed, even amongst the most conscious, kind of spiritual-minded or open-minded, if not spiritually inclined people that I know, how if they have trouble just being with what is occurring, the adaptations and the strange things we come up with in order to try to get someone out of whatever that experience is that we're not comfortable being in with them. I just want to say that it's innocent, meaning no one's taught us and we don't have a good model for it, and yet it's not kind to try to bring someone out of the experience they're having when it comes to grief, because shame can come in, a grieving person, it's not moving along quickly enough, or gosh, I should really be over this by now, or something like that. And to trust nature enough to know that if something is to come back to the surface, it will come back to the surface. And yes, there are moments where we need to reignite something. There are moments where we need to go put ourselves in relation to a lot of beauty, or the preciousness of babies, or music that kind of gets us happy to be in life again. However, we don't need to override the textures of grief. And I'll just say it one last time: if there's a way that I can imagine supporting those who are grieving in better and better ways, it is being with them and not trying to do much of anything. If you feel like you need to do anything, A, check yourself. B, join their world in whatever way you know how. Ask them how. They might not have an answer for you, but you can give that a try too. There is no how-to when it comes to grief. However, moving away from it or trying to distract ourselves from it, I would say that's too habitual, and that's a change that we need to make as a culture, and I hope you will help me do it. Thank you so much if you've taken time to be with this. I'm sending you a lot of love.